Today we are working on a 2015 Toyota Sienna, and it has a 3.5 liter V6 engine. And today we are going to be doing the front and rear brakes, rotors and pads all around. I'm going to be breaking the videos down, uh, one for the front brakes and one for the rear brakes. So today we are going to be doing the rear brakes, rotors and pads. So there are two 14 millimeter bolts here. Remove the caliper. And the first thing you want to do after you remove the caliper is to push the piston in. You want to push the piston in and make sure it goes in all the way so you're able to see in the new pads. You want to find out now that if the caliper is bad or not. So you don't want to do the brake job and then find out close to the end of the brake job that you need calipers. So you want to check them now. Also, you probably want to take like a thin screwdriver or something, or have a seal tool. You can lift up on the dust boot, see if there's any brake fluid, anything that's leaking around the bore of the piston here. If there's any brake fluid that's leaking, then the caliper is bad, and you will need to replace the caliper. So it's dry here, so everything is okay. So I'm going to push the piston in. I'm just using a special brake pad reset tool. And as you are pushing the piston in, you want to go in slowly. You don't want to push it too fast because sometimes that could cause problems. So it's in all the way now. You could use like a C clamp or something to push the pistons in, and that's fine. And some people, they use a channel lock, but you want to be careful to not damage the surface here on the piston, and you don't want to damage the dust seal. So we are going to put the caliper aside. Now there are two 17 millimeter bolts in the back here. So you want to remove the bolts here. The camera is in the way, so I won't be able to show you guys. So it started to rain now. I'm replacing the brakes because the pads are badly worn out on the one side here. So I removed the caliper bracket. Now you just want to give this a few whacks. It should come out. If it does not come out, there's the rubber boot here that you can take out, and you can back off the adjuster for the star wheel at the bottom here. So now I'm just going to remove the rubber boot out of here, and just make sure that you reinstall this back onto the new rotor over here. I've seen some guys they remove it and then they don't put it back. That's not good, because then water and dirt can get inside and cause issues with the parking brake shoes. For the parking brake, because this is incorporated with the hat design brake rotor. They call it a hat because it's a shape of a hat, because the shoes they sit inside here, inside the rotor. So you want to make sure you reinstall the rubber plug onto the new rotor. Also, I forgot to mention that that you want to make sure that you check the brake fluid level before you push the piston in, because when you push the pistons in, that is going to make the brake fluid level go back into the system. So the brake fluid will start to rise when you push the piston in. So if you need to take some of the brake fluid out, and then do so before you push the piston, because otherwise it is going to make a mess and spill brake fluid. So now I'm just going to wash this area down first to get rid of all the brake dust before I start working here. So now I'm just going to service the parking brake shoes. This vehicle has been serviced at the previous brake job, so there's not too much cleaning going on this one. The other day I was working on a 2016 Sienna, but unfortunately I was not able to film it because I just got too busy, so I wasn't able to show that. So anyhow, I'm going to sand down the shoes now. Do the same for the other side. I'm just using some sandpaper here. It's I believe it's you can use 80 grit or 120 grit or something. Aluminum oxide. Now is a good time to have a look at the wheel bearing. Make sure it's okay. there's any play, if there's any kind of strange noises or something. So it's a good time to check them now. So I'm just gonna wash everything down. So now we're just going to lubricate the contact points on the back of the shoes. There are 3 on each side, so 3 here and 3 here. So a total of 6. Just need to use a screwdriver and to pull back on the shoe, and you can lubricate the contact points. I won't be able to show absolutely everything because it's raining now, so I need to get the job done. So it's very difficult to film in the rain. So I'm just giving you guys a brief overview. Although it is a somewhat step-by-step tutorial on this. You want to lubricate the star wheel from underneath here. You want to lubricate in between here. I'm using a fluid film. You can use any kind of lubricant or white lithium grease or whatever. I was going to say that normally I adjust the parking brake, but on this vehicle I have already adjusted, so there's really not much adjustment to be needed here. But one thing to note is that if you want to get the proper adjustment, you'll need to turn the star wheel and to open up the threads here. Make sure they open up, and then you need to get it to a point so that you're not able to install the rotor on, and then you need to back off the star wheel to close it down, and then until you're able to get the rotor on okay without any issues, and then that would be the perfect adjustment for the parking brake. So we're gonna put some anti-seize here. You can use fluid film or white grease or whatever you want. I know that some haters are gonna hate because of this anti-seize. It makes a mess, so it's all up to you. Sometimes I use this stuff, and sometimes I just spray the fluid film stuff or whatever. Everybody has their own way of doing things, so on some stuff like brake jobs, there's not a right or wrong answer, but as long as it's serviced properly, clean off the excess anti-seize that's on the threads here. So usually before you start your brake job, you want to make sure you compare your parts, make sure that everything is the same. You also want to make sure you have the same brake pads too. So compare the old and the new. Make sure you have the right parts, because the last thing you want is to find out that you have the wrong parts in the middle of the brake job. So I'm just going to clean this down with brake cleaner a bit. Although these are coated rotors, I still like to give them a clean. Some of the manufacturers, they put an anti-rust coating on the rotors, so they will have some residual oils left over on the rotor. So you want to make sure you use some brake cleaner to clean off the residual oils, because if you don't do that, then it's going to contaminate the friction material on the brake pads. You want to spray some brake cleaner, clean everything down. I still like to clean them down just in case. It's raining a lot now, so it's getting harder to film. Every time I work on cars, it's raining half of the time. Do the same on the other side. I know that typically on some coated rotors they say to not spray brake cleaner, but I don't think it's going to harm anything. It should be okay. So install the rotor. Make sure that this hole here for the adjustment, the window, is on the cutout here. You see the cutout? Because if you install the rotor somewhere else, it's going to obstruct the way, so you won't be able to adjust it when the rotor is on. So make sure you install the window hole on where the cutout is, like this, so that you'll be able to adjust the star wheel for the next time you do a brake job or something. Then you'll be able to back off the adjuster, because if you put it somewhere else, it's going to block it. Then you won't be able to back off the adjuster on the next brake job if you need to. You're going to spray some fluid film on the rubber plug, or you can spray silicone or put some grease so that you're able to install this easier. You should do this off the vehicle first, just in case the plug falls inside the hole. So I'm gonna spray some disc brake quiet. It's by Permatex on the backing of the pads. This just helps prevent noise and caliper hopping. It's good for problem vehicles when you have brake noise. I just like to apply this on on every brake job. So we're gonna spray a bit on the backing. It's not a requirement. It's just it's it's some of those things you don't need to do it, but if you do it, it could help to reduce some of the brake noise. But usually brake noise for the most part is due to cheap brake pads. And most vehicles use ceramic brake pads these days, but if you use cheap brake pads, sometimes they can make a noise. Anyhow, so we are going to let this dry up for 5 to 10 minutes, and we are going to service the caliper bracket. So we are just going to remove the clips here. We are just going to clean down the rust on the contact points here. Now, if you don't have a die grinder or something, sometimes you can just use a wire brush and just wire brush the area. You will get a majority of the rust off, but depending on how bad the caliper bracket is, you may need to do some more like grinding down. So, but it's best to use like a die grinder to get the rust off. You don't need to get down to the like extremely bare metal. Just need to get majority of the rust off. Uh, that should be okay. It's all good now. You're not going to get every single speck of rust off from there. You don't want to grind too much down on the metal. Otherwise, that's going to cause issues. And in some cases, could cause like a clunking noise if you grind like way too much down. It'll cause issues and the pads will be too loose in there. So now we're going to service the pins. There's a little bit of rust on the edges here. I'm just using the green silicone brake lubricant. I use that for the pins, and I use this for the slides or the contact points, the orange stuff. So now we're gonna do the other one. Clean this off. So what I like to do is I like to get this tool here and remove the rubber boot, and I want to put some grease inside there. Sometimes this area it rust up. And put some grease. And you can put some grease on the boot and reinstall the small boot here. Now you can reinstall the pin. Now if you want, some guys they remove the boot completely to clean the rust here, but you don't really have to do that in this case. Just make sure everything spins and moves freely. And later on, I'm gonna remove some of the excess grease if there's excess grease in here, because sometimes too much grease can cause an airlock in the system. And typically when you reinstall everything and go for a road test, it could cause the vehicle to pull onto one side, depending on which side has the airlock. So we want to make sure that you don't have too much grease inside the boots here, because that can cause issues. I will show you guys that later, just after I'm almost done the brake job, and I will talk about that closer to the end of the video. So now we're gonna use the orange stuff, silicone ceramic grease. Lubricate the contact points here, where the pads are going to seat in. We're going to install the clips. These clips, this piece here, it sits in the back here. So make sure they're installed correctly. The same way for the other side. You want to lubricate that. You don't want to put too much grease. Some guys like to put an excessive amount of grease, which is no good. I know in some areas, if you live in the Rust Belt, some guys they paint the caliper bracket and stuff. So this is all done now. So we are ready to install this onto the vehicle. I'm gonna put some anti-seize on the bolts. I already cleaned down the rust off camera. There's not too much rust on this, so I don't need to worry about it as much, because this vehicle has been serviced in previous years. So now we're gonna install the caliper bracket. It's just the 2 bolts here. Usually I like to use like an impact or something to drive the bolts through, but there's not that much room here. So I'm just gonna use a ratcheting wrench. I will put the torque spec on the screen for you guys. I'm just going to tighten these up using the German method, nice and tight or good and tight. So make sure you tighten these up well. So now I'm going to lubricate the contact points on the pads. We're going to do the outboard pad first. We're going to do the inboard pad. On these particular pads, it does not matter on which way, what side you install these on. They're exactly the same, depending on what kind of pads you guys have or using. So now I'm going to do the other side here. Now, I forgot to mention earlier that you want to do all of your cleaning first before you put everything on back. I forgot to clean this area. I like to clean this area here because sometimes there's a lot of brake dust and rust and dirt here. This is an aluminum caliper, so there will be a corrosion because aluminum corrodes and steel rust. So you want to clean this area down. Just this area over here. Just want to make sure this surface is clean. Some guys like to put some lube or something here, but I don't normally, I don't like to put anything. So now we're just gonna reinstall the caliper. Make sure that when you install this, that the flex hose, the brake hose, is not twisted. You gotta make sure it's parallel, running parallel to the caliper. So we're gonna install the bolts now. It's already lubricated it with anti-seize. Just need to tighten up the bolts now. And if you need to, you might need to put a pair of vice grips to hold down on the pin, but carefully to not damage the boot. So that's installed now. We're saying make sure that this is parallel to the caliper. Make sure it's not twisted, because if you don't see it and you go for a road test and you keep driving, it's possible to have a brake failure. So anyhow, the job is all done now. The last thing I like to do is to double check my work. I like to push the caliper back and forth, make sure it's moving freely, and turn the rotor. Make sure the rotor is not locked up. And you should probably test out the parking brake. Make sure the parking brake works well and holds the wheel down well. And then after, I'm just going to wash off the rotor just to get rid of any leftover residue or lubricant that may be on the rotor still, and then that's it. So I was saying earlier, usually I like to use a flathead screwdriver or something and to push back on the boot. Make sure there's no excess grease here. Make sure there's no excess grease, and the same for the bottom, because you don't want an airlock in the system that will cause the vehicle to pull onto one side if you put too much grease in here. So usually I like to squeeze the boot a tiny bit just to get rid of any excess grease that may be inside here. So I'm just going to wash down the area now, get rid of any excess grease here, dirt, and then you should be all good to go. Just make sure you, when you finish the other side, to pump the brake pedal a few times or so until you have a firm brake pedal, and then you can go for a road test. Put some anti-seize here, and then that should be it.